各位觀眾大家好，歡迎收睇26分鐘見證實錄。每逢9月都係一個新學年嘅開始，而開學咧已經超過1個月啦。教育下一代嘅責任就落喺教師身上。但係全國近期都出現咗教師離職潮，其中以卑詩省最為嚴重。根據卑詩省府網站 WorkBC 嘅數據指出啦，8月份省內教育行列比起上一個月咧係少咗2.6%，相當於5200個職位。究竟係乜嘢原因導致呢一連串嘅問題出現呢？教師去咗邊度啦？缺乏教師嘅問題又會點樣影響到教學環境呢？
We do know that lots of teachers are retiring, finishing up their careers and leaving, and we're just not producing enough teachers to replace them.
I don't feel it's fine. Teachers are basically like the future. They're educating kids.
教育工作者最希望就係提供一個開心愉快嘅學習環境給予學生，但人力資源不足，教育工作變得困難重重。
It's really difficult to attract good teachers, especially teachers who already have experience in teaching. Just Vancouver, just with the high cost of living, is not that attractive in terms of attracting them to come.
朱傑夫係一名8年級嘅中學生，佢表示自己所就讀嘅學校雖然冇感受得到有教師短缺，但佢身邊嘅朋友就正經歷呢一個問題。
Personally, me and my school, I haven't experienced this problem yet. I know that in other places such as Richmond, I have a friend there. In her school, they're struggling to find a math teacher, so I can see how other schools have this problem. However, in this district, in this area, we probably won't find this problem more. So if my school had this problem, personally, I would also not have much of a problem learning. I'm more self-directed. However, there are lots of kids who need more aid, need more help with teachers, and need more interaction with teachers, so it could affect lots of kids. I don't feel it's fine. Teachers are basically like the future. They're educating kids, but I can see why there is a teacher shortage, because teachers don't really get paid enough because of inflation and like the war. That everything's really expensive, and I don't think the teacher's paycheck is really cutting it.
朱傑夫嘅媽媽單紅霞本身擁有教學背景，佢表示近期同其他家長都有談論過教師短缺呢一個議題，認為呢一個問題已經唔係一朝一夕嘅事。雖然個仔學校暫時未有呢一種情況發生，但作為家長嘅佢亦都非常擔心。
但是大家都在講，比如說 housing price 是吧？它這個房價高了，就是大家對老師來說，剛才我小孩也講，他老師的那個工資平均工資並不是很高的，所以說白了就是他生活的費用太高了，在這邊這也是一個問題。另外一個更重要的問題是，我們這 demographic 也在變，就是說很多的移民來，然後他對大家都帶小孩子過來嘛，他對那個教育的這個 demand 也在升高。就是在 COVID 期間，比如說 high school，特別是 public high school，他的學生上學的時間只有50%，那個是當時就是當時是一個很大的問題，一個是你家長要投入時間，另外一個就是你的小孩子需要怎麼去 engage 他，如果他沒有去上學的時候，當然這是 COVID 時間的問題了。那如果是真正有 BC teacher shortage 的話，小孩子沒有老師，那在新聞裡你也聽到有的時候學校就會 suspend 他的 class， 那就是一個很大的問題。那小孩子不去上學，他去哪裡？是不是？家長要抽出時間來陪他們，或者你要把他送到其他的 program 裡面去。所以，這就是你的經濟壓力會大一些，然後對孩子的成長肯定也是一個問題。如果老師就是如果像我剛才講， 老师的短缺主要是在 special education 这方面，就是说最需要老师的孩子可能就是最得不到老师的关心。如果你有个 teacher shortage 的话，那么这些孩子对他们的影响会更大一些。所以教师短缺对孩子的影响会不一样的。如果你就是家庭本来就是有就是你的这个经济收入本来就不稳定，然后学校里面又不能提供稳定的教育的话，对孩子的影响，我觉得是会很大的。其实 BC 的教师短缺不是 BC 省一个省的问题，整个加拿大的问题。但是如果你看 BCTF 的最近的一个 report， 还有 Ministry of Advanced Education and Training and Skills，在2020年的时候，他们就说了，在2020到2029年之間 ，BC 省需要新雇用大概2萬多老師，所以說它是一個 systematic problem。
代表卑詩省45000名教師嘅卑詩教師聯會一直有關注呢一個問題。主席 Clint Johnston 就表示，近年卑詩省教學需求增加，但反之教師人數減少，導致有學校需要停課。咁樣唔單止會影響教學環境，亦都會影響學生學習進度。佢指出，新冠疫情期間有唔少教師選擇提早退休。
There's a lot of teachers retiring as well, and I think a link to that is how many we're bringing in. So I don't have exact numbers on how many quit each year, how many retired. We know that during COVID, some chose to retire early if they were near the end of their career and they thought they could. So that exacerbated the problem, that made it worse. We don't have exact numbers, but we do know that lots of teachers are retiring, finishing up their careers and leaving. And we're just not producing enough teachers to replace them. So I think that's where that real significant drop comes from.
至於喺教師薪酬方面，根據薪酬統計網站 talents.com 數據顯示，卑詩省教師平均月薪為大約5000元，相對於亞省以及安省教師平均薪酬仲要高，但薪酬再高亦都敵唔過高通脹。根據加拿大統計局數據顯示，卑詩省8月份通脹率為7.3%，係全國排名嘅第4高，亦都相較全國平均7%高出0.3個百分點。即使薪酬再高於其他省份，但通脹高，足以將收入以及支出抵消。Johnston 就認為疫情影響底下，教師薪酬追唔上市場步伐，令唔少教師往東移。
Well, we think that's a definite problem. We know we're in the lower half of salaries for teachers in Canada. So a lot of other jurisdictions, our members know they can move there and make more money. And when you combine that with, as you said, the really high cost of living, in BC, that creates a significant problem for teachers who want to live in the community they work in. And I think it's worth noting also that's not just a metro problem anymore. We used to think of it as if you're in Vancouver. But the housing shortage, the cost of living has risen all through our province. And when you can go next door to Alberta and make maybe $10,000 more and have lower cost of living, that's a really attractive situation to consider.
一直有研究教育行政以及發展嘅卑詩大學教育學院副教授 Jason Ellis 就認為，教師短缺源於吸納人才不足。即使大學一直都有培育一班年青人士，但未必填補得到空缺嘅位置。佢又指呢一種問題長久落去，將會影響教學模式以及學童身心發展。
We are not filling teacher education seats across the province. As far as I know, at University of British Columbia, we're filling all available seats. But that's, as I say, the elastic supply, right? The elastic enrollment is the real problem. We can't necessarily ramp up or, add 10% even or 20% or double the number of teachers we prepare in a year. We might be able to do that, but it'll take us a year or two. And once that's happened, well, then the enrollment has contracted again, and then we have an oversupply of teachers. And that's not good either, because they're trained at public expense, right? We don't want to train too many of them. It's not fair to them either, for that matter. I think the teacher shortage is usually because the enrollment is more elastic than the teacher supply. So the enrollment in BC schools goes up and down more quickly and by a greater degree than the supply of teachers does. And that's usually where we run into a problem, where there are too many new students in a given year and not enough new teachers. So I mean, there are really two problems there. One is not being able to find any adult to be in front of a class, and that can happen. Though British Columbia also allows any person who is an adult who can, who's an upstanding member of their community, who's an adult, to teach on what's called a letter of permission. And so the Minister of Education gives a person who's not certified to teach permission to be in front of a class. But that person doesn't necessarily, and usually does not, have any initial teacher education. They haven't taken any education courses. They don't have an undergraduate degree. So they're not able to teach as effectively as a person who has that preparation. Initial teacher education, what we offer here at UBC, prepares teachers to do things like work with English language learners, or to know how to evaluate and assess students, or to understand child development principles. And teachers on letters of permission don't have that preparation at all. So in places where there's no teacher and they can't even find someone on a letter of permission, obviously kids are out of school, and that's a considerable problem. But even in places where they are able to find teachers on letters of permission, this is also a problem because they are not as qualified and effective as certified teachers are.
作為教育界一份子，卑斯教師聯會主席 Clint Johnston 就認為缺乏教師對一啲有特別需要嘅學童嘅影響更大，對佢哋嘅學習進度有阻滯，亦都得唔到保障。
Well, it affects it quite immediately, and it impacts absolutely both our members and the students. In particular, when I'm thinking of students, we have a lot of students who need special services to support them to achieve the most they can in their education. And when you're short of teachers, it means that the first move is to call in TTOCs, but we have a shortage of them as well, substitute teachers. And so the next thing is they look to pull people from their regular work assignments. And unfortunately, that's often what we call non-enrolling. So it's the specialists who are supporting children with learning language, with special needs they may have to access their education. And that's those one-on-one supports and small group supports that the student then loses out on because that teacher has to fill in a classroom. So it impacts our members definitely, and as well the students who aren't getting the services that they actually need.
咁隨住通貨膨脹嘅影響，教師嘅薪酬追唔上步伐，生活成本高昂，令到教師往東移去到其他省份執教，亦都有教師提早退休。冇咗一啲作育英才嘅人，將會影響到整體學生嘅學術水平。究竟有啲乜嘢方法可以吸納人才？喺現階段又有一啲嘅學校經常要尋找代課老師，過程之中又衍生出啲乜嘢問題啦？我哋下一節翻嚟再睇。歡迎翻嚟節目時間。教師提早退休，令到省內教師職位懸空數量增加。咁再加上生活成本高昂，令到省內部分嘅教師萌生離開嘅念頭。咁有學校為咗填補職位空缺就只能夠聘請未有得到教師證書嘅老師。但係過分依賴呢類別嘅人士，會帶嚟啲乜嘢後果呢？當局會採取啲乜嘢嘅措施去吸納人才啦？
喺卑斯省教師短缺問題唔單止係發生喺公立學校，私立學校亦出現同樣問題。呢一間位於溫哥華私立學校嘅校長，最近幾個月都為教師人手不足嘅問題感到惆悵，亦都意識到省內教師短缺嘅問題非常嚴重。
We're in the city of Vancouver, and so that in itself is very difficult because the living standards, the cost of living in Vancouver is quite high. And with our teacher salaries being quite modest, it's really difficult to attract good teachers, especially teachers who already have experience in teaching. Just Vancouver, just with the high cost of living, is not that attractive in terms of attracting them to come. Yeah. Another situation is, I think just the profession itself is very difficult. There's lots of high demands on teachers, with teachers having to deal with a lot of different classroom expectations. Even with COVID, right? There's online teaching they need to learn, hybrid teaching they need to learn, and also what we call adverse childhood experiences. There's a lot of kids who are dealing with trauma, a lot of kids who are dealing with mental health issues. It's just a very complicated context to be a teacher in. So yeah, I think it's very difficult to attract good teachers. Definitely it has been very difficult to find teachers, especially this summer. We had a teacher who was not well and needing to resign during the summer. I was on vacation actually, and she gave me a call and she had to resign, and that journey in August just to find a teacher to be suitable for one position as a full-time position to start in September was very difficult.
Grace 亦都感到好慶幸自己嘅學校現時教師人數齊全，請返嚟嘅代課老師亦都有資歷認可。但佢亦都留意到，唔係所有嘅學校都能夠聘請有資歷認可嘅代課老師。
Substitute teachers we call teachers on call. Teachers on call are actually teachers with certification. It is very difficult to find good teachers on call right now because there definitely is a teacher shortage. So to find teachers who are not in a position already and willing to do on-call work is even more difficult. So definitely when our teachers are not well and they need a substitute for them in the classroom, it has caused a lot of scrambling within our own school just to find coverage for them. I think we've been very lucky as a community, as an independent school, but yes, I'm hearing a lot of difficulties for rural schools, maybe in rural areas in British Columbia, to find certified teachers to be in the classroom. I think the classroom is a very complicated place to be, and I think without training, it's very hard for teachers to know how to manage all the different diverse things that happen within a classroom. It's not just teaching the curriculum, that untrained teachers may not even have curricular content knowledge, but it's also classroom management. Like, how do you make sure that kids are well and thriving in the classroom? So without training, it definitely is very, very difficult.
事實上，教師短缺問題遍佈全國，而喺卑斯省有啲學校為咗填補教師職位空缺，只能夠聘請未獲資歷認可嘅代課老師。卑斯大學教育學院副教授 Jason Ellis 就認為，長期依賴代課老師未能照顧到每個年齡組別嘅學生需要。
I think it does. It affects, as I say, the effectiveness of teachers. And so a teacher who has not had an initial teacher education doesn't know or understand the principles of how to evaluate and assess children, for example. They may not know the best ways or any way to teach English language learners or to assess English language learners' degree of ability in English. They have no preparation in child development, so they don't understand what to expect of children of a certain age, and so on. It's unfair to students in the sense that every student in BC deserves qualified and certified teachers, and uncertified teachers are by definition unqualified teachers. So they don't have that initial teacher education where they've learned how to work with children, how to teach specific subjects, and so on.
對此，卑斯教師聯會主席 Clint Johnston 同樣認為學生應該接受高質教育。
There's a significant and immediate impact. And by the way, we understand people who take those positions, they're trying to help solve a problem, and that's great. But without the proper training, we think that what happens is students don't get the high-quality education that BC is known for. They don't get full access to achieve the potential they could in our system because teaching is a highly skilled profession. And if you're pulling people in who don't have that training, certainly the quality of that education isn't going to be the same. So we think every student deserves to have a fully trained, well-funded teacher in front of them in every classroom.
教育界唔同人士都對過分依賴代課老師授課嘅做法提出關注，但教師短缺問題迫在眉睫。究竟有咩短期解決措施？卑斯教師聯會同卑斯公校僱主協會嘅集體協議，其實喺今年6月30日已經到期。Johnston 表示，解決現況除咗需要為教師提高薪酬，亦都需要為一班立志想成為教師嘅人士提供更多空間接受培訓。
Well, it's not the only solution. I think it's part of a solution. And when you look at it, as I said at the very beginning, we're not producing enough teachers, training enough teachers either. So we need more spaces in universities for students and people who want to become teachers. We need to have more places around the province where people can get that training. A lot of people have to move away from their community for years if they want to get that training, and that's not ideal for them. So we need more places to get that training done. But absolutely, at the end of the day, salary and the working environment, the working conditions, the workload, it has a huge impact. So that's at the bargaining table. We can get the salaries up, we can improve the working conditions, make sure that teachers can earn enough money to live in their community, and have a workload that lets them stay in teaching as a career for decades. And that's the goal. So it's part of a solution, but not the entire solution. I'm not sure. I think what's really needed is what we would hope every worker in BC gets, which is we need raises when we bargain contracts. We need raises that keep up with the cost of living. And as you said, that varies. It's really high right now. So we need salaries that keep up with the cost of living and add a little bit so that your salary actually goes up. Because if it's not keeping up with the cost of living, your salary is actually going down. So I think in that sense, they do need to put more money into it to ensure that we can get a cost of living increase in our contract and get a raise as well.
Alice 教授亦都認同提高薪酬係其中一個解決方法，但背後仍然有唔少因素影響教師供應，包括同家庭因素有關。
It can help. Teacher pay can help with recruitment and retention. And recruitment is like new teachers, and retention is keeping the ones you have. But it might not be a silver bullet. It's not necessarily the best way to solve the way to solve the problem. And there are a number of reasons for that. But one is that teacher pay in BC is equalized from district to district, more or less. So districts are not able to offer more pay to recruit teachers from another district. That means there's less movement within the province. Teachers don't necessarily move here from other provinces to take teaching jobs. That's because teachers have ties to the communities in the provinces in which they live. So they aren't necessarily going to come here from Ontario for a job. And that also affects teachers within the province. There may be a need for teachers in rural or remote areas, but teachers from the Lower Mainland or most parts of the island are not going to relocate there because they have family ties here, and often they have spouses who work in other occupations here. So if I can give you an example, it may be possible for a person to find a teaching job in a rural or remote part of the province, but it may not be possible for that person's spouse to find a job as a lawyer or an accountant or a doctor, because those jobs may not exist, and so that person will not move. And there's not really much inducement in terms of pay that you can do. You can't pay a person more to move to a place where their spouse can't work. Those are issues that are much more complicated and much more difficult to tackle. And so while increased pay would be good for teachers in the sense that it's a fairness issue and it's a cost of living issue in BC, it is not necessarily the solution to this particular problem.
佢亦都認為卑詩省府本身一直都有途徑給予嚟自其他省份以及其他國家嘅教師前往卑詩省執教，並取得認可嘅教育文憑證書。但佢認為呢一個途徑過程複雜，期望當局可以加快審批一啲本身有經驗嘅教師申請，盡快彌補短缺問題。
There are labor movement agreements within Canada that mean that teachers who hold, say, certification from Ontario are able to move that certification to BC much more easily than they would have been able to 10 years ago even. Usually certification in one province is accepted now as certification in another. But for international or foreign applicants, it's much different. Someone certified to teach in, say, the United Kingdom or in Hong Kong or somewhere else in the world can't not as easily move those credentials here. They'll often be asked to take additional courses to certify to teach in BC. That has its place because BC is a unique context and people need to understand the learners here and the type of system we have. But there also is room, I think, for more flexibility there in letting some teachers who are very qualified and certified in another jurisdiction to come here. Having said all of that, teachers don't tend to emigrate for jobs as often as we might think. So even if we corrected that problem, we wouldn't likely solve the significant shortage in the short term.
作為校長嘅 Grace， 佢指出現時從國際其他地方想前嚟卑詩省教書嘅人士申請資歷認可，要經過繁複嘅手續。佢期望有關當局精簡審批程序，俾一啲有經驗嘅教師彌補現時嚴重短缺嘅問題。
Definitely professional teachers who have had lots of hurdles as they have come into Vancouver. So we have a teacher who's a certified teacher, taught in a private local school in Hong Kong for many years, specialized with high school students, and having him come into our school because he's in Vancouver now to get his certification transferred, we call it, has been very difficult. The timing of the teacher regulation branch with the documentation being transferred, some of the credits not fully recognized and being requested asked to do some upgrade, even at the university level, to kind of be more aligned with the assessment practices of BC, have been hurdles actually for these teachers. This specific teacher, just getting him from being in Vancouver into the classroom has been quite a few months. And even today, our strategy is not just to get him to transfer his teaching certificate, because we know that's going to take some time. We even had to apply for a letter of permission. So both things at the same time. And a letter of permission, we just want to make sure all our teachers are certified to be in the classroom. And so those processes have taken a long time. And so I think as a system, as a society, we really need to look at how can we make that process quicker.
好啦，今集嘅節目時間呢又差唔多啦。咁如果觀眾對我哋嘅節目有啲乜嘢意見嘅話，係好歡迎大家以電郵嘅方式同我哋聯絡㗎。我哋嘅電郵地址係 mag26@fairchildtv.com。咁如果觀眾咧想重溫翻今集嘅節目，亦都可以上到去我哋嘅網站3w.fairchildtv.com， 點擊節目重溫一欄就可以睇得翻㗎啦。下星期同樣時間再同大家見面，晚安。